Joined by Clayton Sayfie from a snowy Ann Arbor in front of a snow-covered Bo Schembechler. Clayton, what do you think? What do you think Bo would have said about Jim Harbaugh's declaration? He called it a nomination that Sherrone Moore is now a Michigan man.
As I said, the coaches, the staff, especially Coach Sherrone Moore, called a great game, coached the offensive line, and made the decisions as the head coach. And I'm not saying that I'm in a position of granting who a Michigan man is or who isn't, or who a Michigan legend is or is not the maker of those two lists. But I have nominated people before, and I nominate Sherrone Moore as a Michigan legend.
He's been nominated, so someone has to confirm. Is that the Supreme Court or the Washtenaw County Court?
Well, I mean,
How do you
they didn't go to the Washtenaw County Court when they had the chance.
That's true.
They decided not to.
That's true.
We know how they ruled on the vacuum cleaners, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's a whole HOA. I hate HOAs. So
well, it doesn't everyone. So, but it is interesting because Sherrone Moore, when you think about it, his place in Michigan lore is secure.
Yeah,
there obviously is probably going to be some more to Sherrone Moore in Michigan's story, but the fact that he, as the acting coach, beats Ohio State in the way that he did, with keeping the promise to call the most aggressive game anybody's ever seen. That if you're going to do it, that's how you do it.
So we talked after the Penn State game, and then there was the Maryland game, and there were a lot of complaints from the Michigan fans. And I even thought there were a couple of points, especially Maryland, that they called it a little bit too conservatively. And it was like, okay, Sherrone's got a lot on his plate. He's the head coach. There's pressure on him. Like, he's got to win these games. That may have been a blessing in disguise, because that week when he's sitting there like, okay, we got to call it a little bit more aggressively. And it's Ohio State. Like he said on Saturday, I mean, they've been preparing for this, and they've had calls ready for this all year. I mean, you're working on stuff in fall camp that you probably have an idea is going to come for this game. So the fourth downs, I mean, absolutely massive. And you compare that with how Ryan Day called the game for Ohio State, and it was a little bit different, a little bit more. I'm not going to say scared people Ohio State fans are that I've seen on Twitter.
It's
I've
really
seen a
the
couple
one
columns.
situation at the end of the half that felt that way, but everything else felt fairly normal for an Ohio State game.
Sure. And I think people are kind of going back to last year when it was a little more. They thought he should have gone for a couple fourths, but regardless, the way Michigan did it, the way Sherrone Moore did it, and we just talked off air about this, but when you're the guy making the call that you're going to go for fourth, and then you are the one making the play call, that could be a pretty dynamic, combo right there.
You have to make, because a lot of times when you have a more traditional situation with a head coach who makes the big picture decisions and a coordinator who then calls the plays, the head coach gives the yay or nay.
Right.
And of course the play caller has the play ready to go if the head coach says yes. But you have to make the yay or nay decision and then have the specific play ready in that situation, which he did. And there are some good play calling head coaches out there. Mike Norvell at Florida State's in position to maybe make the playoff. We've seen Lincoln Riley do it, but there's also some people who've not been able to handle both roles.
Right. And it's impressive that he's been able to do it. It's just his fourth game as a head coach.
Yeah.
And like you said, I don't think the history's here over. I think Sherrone Moore will probably be Michigan's next head coach, whether that's next year or in 5 years.
Well, and let's talk about that, because Jim Harbaugh's back this week. He's going to be coaching the team on the field at the Big Ten championship game, and then beyond as they go into the rest of the postseason. But for Sherrone Moore, obviously what people saw on Saturday and really the previous weeks, he's ready to be the head coach of a big-time college football program right now. I don't know that there's even a job out there that would be worth looking at when you're potentially in line to get Michigan.
I agree. His name's been thrown out there by for Indiana by some national guys or whatever, and I think that's fair. Like if you're Indiana, you give him a call. Absolutely. If you're anyone with an opening at a Power 5 right now, maybe not like an A&M or whatever, obviously, but the Twitter people would just kind of veto that anyway. But if you're at an Indiana, you give him a call. But I agree with you. I mean, he loves it here. He came here in 2017 and has just risen to now this point where he was the head coach for Michigan, Ohio State. And I think he understands probably what's in the future, or at least wants to wait out a couple more years.
Well, and I would at least wait out this offseason, because there's a lot of factors at play. You've got Jim Harbaugh's tried to get an NFL job the last 2 years. There are going to be multiple NFL openings that Jim Harbaugh might actually be an attractive candidate for.
Yeah.
And then you've also got the NCAA stuff. You've got what will happen in terms of the first case, which is not closed yet,
Right.
and then the sign stealing case, which is still very much open.
Yeah.
So if they get into a situation where there's a suspension that's long enough that you can't keep Jim Harbaugh or he's almost not there, well, you got Sherrone Moore.
You do, and I think that's probably the route they will go. But it's kind of down the road at this point, even a little bit.
Let me tell you about Rhoback. As you see, I am wearing my black performance hoodie. I've told you a million times, the Rhoback performance hoodie is the most comfortable piece of clothing known to man. It feels like second skin at this point. But I got to tell you, here in Michigan, very cold. I've been looking on rhoback.com. That's RHOBACK.com at the Summit Fleece Pullover. It looks like you're wearing a hug. I need one of these things. You know what? I may go to rhoback.com and use that promo code Staples to get 20% off my order because I think I need that Rhoback performance fleece. It looks like it would be amazing to wear in weather like you saw me and Clayton Sayfie in earlier today. That is exactly what it was designed for. So go to rhoback.com. Polos, hoodies, Q-zips, fleeces, joggers, shorts. Probably not shorts right now. Joggers. They got it all. And it's the most comfortable clothing you will ever put on your body. Rhoback.com, RHOBACK.com. Use that promo code Staples for 20% off your first order.
It's funny when...
Well, I mean, that sign stealing thing, you think about the case, like the Bill Self case lasted 6 years. So we don't know that that's going to resolve in the offseason.
It's expedited. It seems like the way it's unprecedentedly expedited, if that's a word. But you still could take a while. I mean, you could still look at court cases coming out of this if they decide to go. That sort of thing.
So let's talk Jim Harbaugh. He's back.
He said he never left last night.
Well, yeah, but he wasn't there.
Yeah, I know.
He wasn't there on Saturday.
He's back.
But as we talked about, Sherrone Moore calls the offensive plays.
Yeah.
Jesse Mentor calls the defensive plays. This is a person coming back to make the big picture decisions. Do you think that changes? It certainly sounded from what Jim Harbaugh said, like that Sherrone Moore made big picture decisions very much how Jim Harbaugh feels like he would have made them in the same situation.
Yeah. So I think Jim Harbaugh's been, especially the last few years, early on in his tenure, a little bit more conservative. And I think probably a lot of that had to do with some of the personnel not quite being yet what they wanted. But last few years, he's been aggressive. Like, I think I was saying this during the game too. I think he would have gone for those. I think they would have ran basically the same stuff.
Yeah.
And
I've always felt that he's a very much analytically forward, when the book says go, you're going kind of person.
Yeah, for sure. And when he feels like they went for 4th and 1, I think at Wisconsin in 2021 from their own 34 on the opening drive of the game. And someone asked him after, what made you go for that? He said, just a look in our players' eyes. So he goes off both, I think.
Well, and that's what he was saying. I asked him about Sherrone Moore and when in the process of getting to know Sherrone Moore, did he feel like he'd be ready for this? Obviously, you're never ready for what they've had in the past month or so.
Right.
But if you had to have someone else do it, he clearly had him in mind as the person who, and I said, what was it? And he said he trusts the players and the players trust him. And I thought you saw a perfect example of that in the first half with the 3 4th downs.
No doubt. And it did feel like it was pretty obvious that he was going to tap Sherrone Moore in this job. And it felt like pretty obvious what they were going to do in a lot of those situations was going to be what Jim Harbaugh would have done. And like he said, it's exactly how he would have called it. And it felt like Jim Harbaugh's team on Saturday, even though he wasn't here.
So they've got to play Iowa. They have to win this game to get in the college football playoff probably. They're going to be heavily favored.
Yep. Do
you think, though, is this the calmest week of the past month and a half?
Oh, yeah.
Probably feels like the most normal. We're watching the guys go into the facility behind us, but I'd imagine it feels like the most normal they've had in a while.
Yeah, sounds like the NCAA, in terms of their investigation, has backed off for a little bit, which makes sense. I mean, it was Thanksgiving last week and the biggest game of the year. Now you move on, Big Ten championship. We may not have been, if they lose that game, we were not standing here. And now it's like, okay, we can go into a regular game week. They have their coach back, and they're familiar with this spot too. Going to Indy, the first time they did this, a lot of people were asking, how are they going to come down from this emotional high? feels more normal this year beating Ohio State. Like, even from a fan base perspective, talking to people, now that I think they're ready for the next challenge, and they know that 15-0 is kind of the goal.
Well, and also this is their third time doing this. There are
Right.
guys who've only seen this their entire career, so this becomes normal.
Right.
This is the new normal.
You'd have to be a fifth-year senior at Michigan to have lost to Ohio State at this point.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of that from both sides of the rivalry.
And you'd have to be a fifth-year senior at Ohio State to
exactly. So, it feels like they're ready to go. That they're probably not going to be any surprises this week. I realize as I say that, given what's happened in the past,
it's not going to age well.
Yeah. So, but we'll see. It's Ann Arbor. It's snowy. Clayton Sayfie, Bo Schembechler.
Blocking and tackling is what it comes down to. That's what Bo would have said. So
you know what?
Came down to that.
Bo's right.
Yeah.
Bo's exactly right. And, Jim Harbaugh with the further Bo quotage, the team.
Yeah.
He said, this is the team.
Incredible speech. I asked about that on Saturday when some of the guys were talking about it. I mean, and they said every coach came up and gave that speech. I mean, this feels as much like that as possible. And it seems like there are always things that go on throughout a season or whatever. Once you get to that week, last week, everybody comes together. You just want to play your role or whatever. Like if you're a Donovan Edwards, you're not going to be Blake Corum on Saturday, even though you were the legend the year before. But it seems like everyone buys in, and that's what they need the rest of the way, is everyone kind of starring in their roles as they go forward. Because I think this team does have a shot to win the whole thing.
Clayton, they say those who stay will be champions. I standing here, those who stay will be cold. So we're going to go get warm.
It's true.
We'll talk to you later. Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples On 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On 3 Sports YouTube channel.